Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber in studio in Oklahoma City, and from Orlando, Florida, Jason Kersey. Jason, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Just got a haircut, so I'm ready to go for the game tonight.
Yeah, and this is a little bit different podcast for us, a game day edition of the Nonfiction Writers, but I wanted to get something out there with all the holidays. It's been tough to get everything scheduled together. But what's the experience been like for you so far since you've been in Orlando, got there the day after Christmas?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. It's the weather's great. The weather's fantastic. It sounds like it's not so much up in Oklahoma, so definitely, definitely been nice in that way. But I got here after all the OU player availability was over, so I never got a chance to talk to any of the OU players since I've been down here. So we went out to a Clemson practice and talked to Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables, which was good. Good to talk to those guys. And I wasn't on the beat when Brent was the defensive coordinator, but a lot of the guys who were really enjoyed catching up with him, and he was happy to see them as well. So that was pretty neat. Seems like he would have been a pretty good guy to work with. And Dabo Swinney really seems pretty good too. So the Clemson people have been great. OU had their press conference, and Dabo Swinney had a press conference yesterday. So yeah, I mean, and then I also had a chance to visit some with Ty Darlington's dad for a story that I did, I think, for the Sunday paper. So I've been plenty busy down here, even without much player access.
What was it like catching up with Rick Darlington? And for those who don't know, he's a high school coach in the Orlando area at Apopka High School, where Ty starred, his brother starred, and also was one of the first ones to really go crazy with the Wildcat offense.
Yeah, it was really good. We've talked about doing that story now for a while. He's on the first page of the book Blood, Sweat, and Chalk, which is sort of a football strategy book written for fans, sort of through the eyes of these coaches. It was written in 2010 by Sports Illustrated writer, and you open it on the first page. They're talking about Apopka High School and Rick Darlington, about the single wing, and he installed that, I think, in 2007 when. It was at a time when he really didn't have a drop-back passer. He didn't have anybody on his roster at that time. He sort of was cyclical. He didn't really have anybody he felt comfortable putting back there, so he just said, we're not going to have a quarterback, and we're just going to have a bunch of running backs to take direct snaps. And that's really going old school, back to the 1900s, back to Pop Warner and Jim Thorpe and things like that. And so, but it worked out, and they've set records doing it. But what's so interesting about him is that he's sort of regarded nationally as an innovator, not just from that book. He's been quoted in other articles. A lot of coaches around the country contact him to ask him for advice and pick his brain about things. And another thing that Ty told me about him is, what makes him so good is that he's never married to one system. I mean, they may run the single wing right now, but when Ty's brother Zach was in high school a couple of years ago, he was a big-time quarterback prospect. He's in Nebraska now, and so they threw the ball around then. So he's really able to shift things around, and getting a chance to talk to Rick about that was interesting. He's a really good guy, and obviously a great coach.
Yeah, absolutely, and it worked out pretty well with Ty being from the area, Eric Stryker being from the area, and Ahmad Thomas being from not too far away. I know this isn't the bowl game that any OU fan wanted before the season or even a month ago, but for a few people, it's worked out at least on some level.
Yeah, and I think for Ty Darlington especially, I mean, this is the guy who never got to play in a state championship game. His dad and Apopka have been a really, really powerful program in the state of Florida, but for those years that Ty was in high school, they never even made it to the state championship game, and all of those games are played at Citrus Bowl Stadium. And So Ty, jokingly said he finally made it to the Citrus Bowl, just not when he wanted to, but he's excited to finally get a chance to play there. They've actually won 2 state championships since he graduated.
What have you been over to the Citrus Bowl yet?
Yeah, that's where we had Clemson, where we talked to Dabo Sweeney and Brent Venables. Was over there. We didn't go inside the stadium, but we did get a chance to see it a little bit. They've got it all covered in Russell Athletic Bowl stuff, and so I'm kind of excited. I always like seeing new stadiums. I don't know how many people are going to be there, frankly, but I do think it's going to be neat just to experience new stadium.
Yeah, it certainly will be for you and Barry Trammell and the Oklahoman crew and the other beat writers that are there. Jason, let's move on to the game a little bit. Some interesting storylines. You mentioned Brent Venables being one of them, but there's a few more on the OU side, especially. And I think it starts off with the health of Trevor Knight, Samaje Perine, and Sterling Shepard. Of those guys, which is the one you're most concerned about entering this afternoon's game?
Well, I mean, that's kind of tough to say. I think that if you're an OU fan, I think you're most concerned about Sterling Shepard, and the reason is his absence has been just crippling for this offense. And people assume that because Trevor Knight was out, that's why the passing game went away, and I think that had a little bit to do with it. But Sterling Shepard was the only receiver that was really consistent and really was consistently able to not only get open but catch the ball when it was thrown to him. And I think that, Cody Thomas never had him. And I'm not saying that Cody Thomas would have been phenomenal in his 3 starts if he'd had Sterling Shepard, but I do think it would have made a difference. And so, to me, Sterling Shepard, they say that he's better and he's really used this time off wisely and he's moving around well, but you really don't know until you get into a game with that groin. So, I think it would be really sad if he went out there another game and had to come off. But I'm afraid that might happen because you just don't know. Yeah,
and reading some of the stuff that Bob Stoops had to say this week certainly seemed like it's something that he's concerned about. Talking to Sterling before the team left, it was certainly something that's weighing on his mind. And I'm with you. I think, you can talk about Trevor Knight being out and Cody Thomas, struggling in replacement of him. But I thought Sterling Shepard was clearly the biggest loss of those two, because I thought Cody Thomas played decently well in the Bedlam game until the running backs went out and they had no choice but to try to throw the ball, and everybody knew what was coming.
Yeah, and then at that point they couldn't even pick up a first down, and that's the thing, the crazy thing. You think about, everybody talks about Bob Stoops' decision to punt to kick to Tyreek Hill, which was obviously a horrible decision, but if they just pick up one first down, they win that game. They're able to run the clock out, and that's what's just so unbelievable. They couldn't even gain enough yards to get a first down.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they lost not only Perine but lost Keith Ford for at least a little bit of that game, and it just wasn't really conducive to what Alex Ross can do well. You've got to have other weapons on the field to get him some space when he's carrying the ball.
Yeah, and you also got to remember, they were down Adam Shedd as well at that point. So, a key offensive lineman who's really played well this year. So, it was bad, and I'm not saying that's an excuse. They still should have won that game, but when you lose people like that, it makes it pretty tough.
You mentioned Adam Shedd. What's your sense? Is he gonna play today? Is he not? Or do you have any kind of sense on his status?
Not really. I assume he's going to play, but I wasn't here for the 15 or 10 or probably closer to 7 minutes they let us watch practice the other day, so I didn't get a chance to actually see if he was out there. So
he wasn't, is my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I don't know. He's an interesting case. He's a guy that you feel bad for because, you know, if he'd have been able to stay healthy throughout his career, I think he could have been a lot better. Had a really nice career and maybe potentially had a chance to make it in the NFL because when he's been healthy, he's been really good. And, you know, this year there was some talk and some whispers that, you know, maybe after last year when he had all those injuries that he was just going to quit. And I think, you know, even Bronson Irwin told me that, you know, he told Adam, you know, you got to think about your life after football, you know. And so I at that point I thought there was a good chance he was going to quit. But he had surgery and came back and had a really nice year, and then he gets hurt again, you know, in the last game. And if he doesn't get to play in the bowl game, that would really be a shame because he's a good guy, and you hate to see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely, especially considering he had to miss the game last year. Deontay Savage stepped in and had a fantastic Sugar Bowl last year, but losing Adam Shedd again for a bowl game would be really difficult.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like you said, I think Deontay Savage is capable of playing well. But really, once you get past Deontay Savage, then you really don't know what you have. And I think that's the bigger concern.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Jason, it seems like when you're talking about Clemson's offense against Oklahoma's defense, this is about the perfect matchup for OU because you've got I don't want to say inexperienced because Cole Stout has plenty of experience on the field, but an inconsistent quarterback who has a tendency to make mistakes, hasn't proven that he can consistently take advantage of what defenses give him. And obviously OU's defense has struggled against the pass all season. They've been solid against the run, but how much of that is because of teams just haven't had to run it against them? But what do you think of that matchup?
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean, I think that it's a big advantage. If Deshaun Watson was playing, that there would be no doubt in my mind that Clemson would win the game, frankly. But I think that Cole Stout, you know, I actually picked Clemson anyway, and the reason is I just think that there's so much inexperience on the back end in the OU secondary. I don't know what an extra 3 weeks of bowl prep is going to do for that. I mean, I think that obviously we saw last year what bowl prep can do for a team and on the improvements you can make. I just think that Clemson still has some good players, and I think they're going to be able to score. Now, in terms of the run defense, I think it's been good, and you're right. Maybe people haven't had to do it as much lately, but run against them. But I do think there are really good players up front for OU. I think they've got a great defensive front seven, and it's too bad that the secondary was so bad this year because you know that defensive front really had a chance to be elite, I think, but they never really got a chance to show that.
Yeah, and especially guys like, you know, Chuka Ndulue that we heard a lot about early in the season, Charles Tapper, who didn't have the just sort of eye-popping plays that we saw from him last year, but I think a lot of that is because of what defenses did to adjust to what OU was doing defensively, and obviously the struggles, once again, the asterisk, outside of Zach Sanchez on the back end. I think Sanchez has been fantastic, but outside of that, they've really had struggles at every spot back there.
Yeah, I mean, Julian Wilson did not transition well to the cornerback position like I think a lot of people thought he would. Jordan Thomas could be really good eventually, but he's only a freshman. Same thing with Stephen Parker. Ahmad Thomas just has not improved. You know, I don't know what they're going to do with that spot next year. I mean, he started every game, which would make you think, you know, they just don't have anybody else they feel comfortable putting back there. But, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe they put Will Sunderland back there. I have no idea what they're going to do next year, but I just don't see it from Ahmad Thomas, you know, at this point.
Yeah, and clearly they've shown that they're not against completely abandoning guys that don't work out. I mean, you look, you know, Stan Von Taylor played a good amount last year, made a start. We haven't seen hardly anything from him. He played a little bit in the Bedlam game and has played some before. And then Cortez Johnson, who made a couple starts last year, and he he's MIA pretty much.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett is the reason for that. we've made that crack quite a bit. I mean, really, since that Kansas State game in Manhattan last year, that first half, we just have not seen Cortez Johnson anymore. And another guy, Dakota Austin. Shoot, remember? I mean, I thought Dakota Austin was going to start this year.
Yeah, and you weren't the only one. There was quite a few people.
And I think he's made like 3 game appearances. Stan Vaughn's played in every game on special teams, but I think Dakota Austin has appeared in like 3 games this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It might be a few more than that, but it's not very many. He has not played in the majority of the games.
No, and let's see, he has played in 4 games this year.
4, okay.
Yeah, and and the first 3 of them were the first 3 games of the season. Iowa State is the only one that he's appeared in since then. So certainly a disappointing season for him. I think a lot of us. I don't know that I expected him to start before the year, but I certainly expected him to play a lot more. And if I would have thought that, Julian Wilson was going to go down with an injury, I thought that he would be, the first man up, and clearly that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I remember in the preseason we all sort of thought that, and then I think maybe a week or 2 before the game, someone asked about backup corners to Mike Stoops, and he goes, "Well, Jordan Thomas would be our top backup," and I think everybody's like, "What?" And but I mean that speaks as much to Jordan Thomas's ability and intelligence as anything, though. I mean that's just a smart guy, who, by the way, is going to be one of the best interviews on the team before it's all said and done. Heck, he might already be. And speaking of that, I have to ask: have you tabulated any votes yet?
I am keeping a running tab. I'm still waiting on 5 votes from some of our colleagues, and going to give them a couple more hours to get their votes to me, and then we'll be releasing the Cooperation with the Media Award, the inaugural OU Cooperation with the Media Award, probably sometime before the game.
Are we calling it the J.D. Reynolds Award?
Oh, yeah.
Are we calling it the J.D. Reynolds? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's got to be named after J.D. I think, what was it, Garen came up with another name that was...
He said Gerald McCoy, and there have been a few other names bounced around, but I really like... and we talked about maybe Gabe Eichert, the Gabe Eichert Award. Gabe Eichert and J.D. Reynolds both have been on the Nonfiction Writers Podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just think J.D., and the reason I think it ought to be J.D. is because he's still so accessible. I never covered him, but, he will help us out in any way he can all the time. He's just one of the best guys I've met since I've come on the OU beat. And so I think it ought to be named after him.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And the cooperation is great too. But I think what also stands JD out, and also this applies to Gabe Eichert. I've only talked to Gerald McCoy a couple times, but is the thoughtfulness behind their answers, the thought that what they say isn't always from a script, that. What athletes say, they put some real thought behind what they're talking about, and they let you get real with them.
Yeah, and that's the deal with JD. He's unbelievably loyal to Bob Stoops and to the program. There's no question about that. You see that from the way he responds when people criticize the coaches and things like that. I mean, those are his friends, and he's very loyal. But at the same time, he's also not afraid to rock the boat a little bit, and that's a good thing. And in a day and age when everybody is so concerned about image and what they're saying, and making sure not to say the wrong thing, it's good to know that there are still guys out there who are willing to be real with not only the media but in turn with their fans. And there are a lot of guys on this team that are like that. And that's why I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the vote comes out. I don't want you to tell me anything else about it because you're tabulating it. I'm not going to say how I voted. I want it all to be a surprise.
Yeah, I will tell you that there's been a lot of players who've seen a spot in the voting. I think there's 9 different players who've earned at least 1 point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
A good spread, and we've already got let's see, what is it? 8, I believe, votes in. 9 votes in so far, so we sent them out to 14 total. So hopefully we'll get a couple
Okay.
more in and be able to announce that this afternoon before the game.
Good deal. And I've checked with OU compliance, and we're going to have to wait and see if we're allowed to actually give a trophy. So we'll have to wait on that. At this point, we're just going to have to announce it.
Yeah. Trophy/plaque to be determined in the future.
As long as it's cleared with compliance. We don't want to. We certainly don't want to screw anybody's eligibility up.
No, we don't, and we don't want to make anybody, donate whatever it would be, $15, $25 to charity, a charity of their choice before they get their eligibility back.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would also think that if Sterling Shepard can go to Orlando and get that big, medal football, which was a fantastic-looking trophy, I think the Disney Spirit Award, I believe it was, that he got. Surely we could give a little trophy or a plaque to one of those guys.
Well,
but,
what I was told about that is that the difference is those are like recognized awards or something. I mean, there's like a difference. So we can't. It's not like we can just make. It's not like someone can just make up an award, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like an official college football award. I think that's the problem. As stupid as that is, by the way, it's incredibly stupid that we even have to have this conversation, but we do.
Yeah, well, we know about OU's compliance department's attention to detail with, there's been some not great stories in the news recently with what happened with the men's basketball team, but also some of the minor violations that were discovered by compliance in the last couple of years that they forced some kind of restitution and training on. And, of course, the biggest one was the gay biker at Postagate last season.
Yeah, and I mean, I should say, I mean, these guys are doing their job and doing it extremely well. I mean, OU has a great compliance department. As goofy as some of these things are, and as ridiculous as some of these OTA rules are, they're making dang sure that they're not getting in any trouble, and that's good. And Jason Leonard is the director, and he's a great guy and does a great job. So
yeah,
I'm certainly not criticizing him or his staff. I just think the NCAA is ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, let's be clear. What we're saying is ridiculous and absurd is the NCAA's rules, not OU's enforcement of them, because clearly they're on top of it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, Jason, finally, last, let's talk predictions for this afternoon's game at Citrus Bowl Stadium, the Russell Athletic Bowl. You've given it a nickname. You can disclose that or you can't. It's up to you. But what do you think?
Well, I am picking Clemson 27-23. I think that their defense is elite, and I think that OU will be helped out by having some of their guys back. But at the end of the day, I think Clemson is the better team right now, even with a backup quarterback that struggled some. Mason Rudolph is a true freshman, and he was still able to complete some big long passes against the secondary. And I'm not saying that Cole Stout is I don't know, better or on an equal level in terms of talent to Mason Rudolph. I just think that if a true freshman can go into Norman and do that, then I see no reason why a senior who started a lot of games can't do it in a bowl game against a pretty weak secondary. So yeah, I'm taking the Tigers in the Walmart Sweatpants Bowl.
There it is, and I'm with you. I picked Clemson to win 31-28. Now I'm wondering if that's a bias against what I see day in and day out, and what we've seen toward the end of the season with this team, because of you look at Clemson and some of their issues on the offensive side. But I do think Cole Stout with Artavis Scott and Mike Williams over there, I think they can make plays enough for them to get some points. I think their defense is going to create a couple turnovers at least and be just